and welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and video show which brings you leadership lessons from hundreds of successful individuals around the world, all in their own right, a role model with knowledge, experience, and wisdom to share. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe so you won't miss a new episode. I'm your host, Frits Bussemaker, and today I'm delighted and privileged to have a conversation with Jackie Phahlamohlaka. Jackie, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Fritz, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
And Jackie, you're calling from South Africa. Allow me to briefly introduce you to the audience. Now, you have quite a long resume. I'll just see if I can pick up some of the highlights. You got your master's in computational and applied mathematics in Canada. You have a PhD in informatics from the University of Pretoria. Actually, you have a dual PhD, because next to the PhD from Pretoria, you also have an executive national security program. You accomplished that. Founding member of the Siyabuswa Educational Improvement and Development Trust, SEIDET, which we'll discuss. And through that initiative, there's been a book written about your experience, what you did for that smart village. You got a number of lifetime achievement awards and recognitions from Africa and on an international stage. And you are also the South African national representative of the IFIP General Assembly, and that is the International Federation for Information Processing, which was founded by UNESCO, I believe, in 1950, if I'm correct, or 60.
1960.
Yes. Okay. Hey, Jackie, again, welcome to the program. And we're going to talk about your work around building smart communities and creating digital villages. Now, I just gave you a summary, the audience a summary of who you are, but if you meet somebody new, what's the first thing you share with people who you don't know yet?
Thanks, Fritz, again. I tell them where I come from.
Yes.
And I would typically tell them about my small village of Siyabuswa, Phahla, in Mpumalanga province.
Okay, could you help? Yeah, could you help? Because we have quite a global audience. Could you place that on the map of South Africa, more or less where that would be?
South Africa is one of the countries in the tip of the African continent, right at the bottom. And most people internationally would recognize Cape Town and Johannesburg and Pretoria. Basically, those are the three main cities in South Africa. But if you want to locate where South Africa is, you look at the map of Africa and you look right at the bottom. And you can't miss South Africa. If you are right at the tip, then you are probably.
And those villages you mentioned, where are they located?
They are up north. Up north, Siyabuswa, for instance, it's about 130 kilometers east of Pretoria.
Okay.
About an hour and a half drive from the city, from Pretoria.
Okay, so that's the village you grew up in?
That's the village I was born, where I was born and where I grew up. And that's where my parents lived when they were still alive. That's the place I call my home.
Okay, now at a certain point you left your village and you went to Canada to do an MSc. How did that happen?
Well, it's a very interesting story. But the short of it is that I was one of those students that won the scholarship to go to Canada, and there was a very stringent process of selection. And if we had more time, I would tell you more about it. But it was a great opportunity. It was a program called the South African Education Trust, a fund, which was a SEIDET program. It's called the Canadian International Development Agency. And it was administered in South Africa by the Educational Opportunities Council, which are the people that actually went around the country hunting for people like me who would qualify to get the scholarship.
Okay.
So I got the scholarship.
Okay, but you probably then know now why you were qualified to go to Canada.
Oh yeah, I do. And that brings me back to that question that I told you about. I mean, they were very specific and very they were hunting. I call it hunting because the panel were looking for people who would be able to give back whatever they would have learned to give back to South Africa. So yeah, I was studying an honors in mathematics at the University of Zululand at that time. I was just about to sit for the final exams of my honors, and they were very much interested in somebody that would study mathematics, and I was just one of them. In fact, I was the only one in the group of 6 guys that eventually won the scholarship. So I definitely did qualify, and that's how I got selected.
Great. So after Canada, and also you at a certain point came back to South Africa, and you took the initiative to found SEIDET. Again, let me get that. That is the Siyabuswa, Your Village Educational Improvement and Development Trust. Why was it needed? Why did you found that?
Fritz, say that it's much as we were very, very energetic and very enthused in getting it off the ground, but it was a product of anger, and all the people that I interacted with in my life, they told me you never start anything out of anger. It's not a good thing. But luckily, instead, we were not angry as we were doing, as we were executing. We were just angry in the beginning, why it needed to be started. So, and the bottom line was it was in response to the very repressive policy of apartheid, which was denying Black children the opportunity to study, especially mathematics, because the proponents of the apartheid were saying, no, it's not, nobody must teach Black children mathematics. And they had their own very strange reasons why, but yeah, that's why when we started SEIDET, it was like, no, this can't be true. Jackie went out of Siyabuswa. He studied at the high school in Buperi, which is not very far from Siyabuswa. And he managed to pass mathematics, and he is doing fine. And he got very good grades and some distinctions. And he won a scholarship to go and study in Canada. And he was even better than some of the students from other parts of the world. So the narrative that Black children shouldn't be taught mathematics, they will never understand it. It was clearly just a criminal proposition. And many of us and the world know now that it was true. So we started SEIDET out of that anger, but we were happy in execution, and that's why we achieved the results that we eventually achieved. But it wasn't just me. It was a whole lot of people, including people in Canada. There was a huge network of people that said, yes, what you are telling us, because I told them when I came back in 1990 from visiting home that of course it was intuitive at that time. It was still during that hyannis system. So when I told them that I visited home in May 1990 and then I came back, people challenged me when I got home. They think that I must do something. Now give me ideas as well. And a lot of Canadian people also contributed, including the university, Dalhousie University, where I studied. So it wasn't just me and the people of South Africa, but it was also the Canadian people that gave ideas, and a number of other South Africans that were outside of the country at that time.
Okay.
So yes.
But still, you were the person who took that initiative based on the reactions around you. And I understand even the king of the Nibili nation confronted you with the same type of anger.
Indeed. I mean, I was
How did
the
that
champion.
happen? Yeah. How did that happen? What's his role and how did that happen?
I was definitely the champion. I mean, because of that anger, it was like now we have to channel the anger in the right way, such that we get all these angry people and those that may not have been as angry as we were to try and make sense of these things that they think we can be able to do. So what we did, we mobilized the teachers. We said, teachers, some of you are good, and you know our system is saying you are all useless, you are all bad guys. And yet we know some of the teachers are really brilliant and they are Black. So we said, why don't we come together and just do what we can and see what, because we don't believe in this narrative that the Black children cannot study mathematics. We already know it is not true. So let us do something at the local level. And the good thing is that it was the people that responded were not only Black people, by the way, a lot of white people from Bronkhorstspruit, from Pretoria, from Marble Hall. Actually, they came and we were very surprised somehow. Because it was indeed surprising. It just proved that, you know, contrary to what other people thought, there were a lot of white South Africans who did not necessarily agree with this harness system. So they came, and when we were mobilizing, they came, and right in the beginning, when we were starting SEIDET, others traveled long distances to come and give supplementary tuition in Siyabuswa.
Now, when you start something like this and it grows to what it is today, did you thrive on that? Were you scared? Because I can imagine that in the day and age you discussed when you started up, it might be quite scary to stick your neck out and start something like that.
Well, luckily it was a large crowd of people like me, so there wasn't anything that really scared me, because I was also a product of the struggle in South Africa. You know, at studying at high school, at the university, we were all looking for ways, and we had to learn how to survive under very repressive, under very, very difficult situations. So we had to, I was trained by the environment to be able to navigate through, to organize people and to get things going still. So
okay,
the scaring was not, no, I wasn't scared at all.
Okay, so you're describing a situation where the big institutions, government, they were not going to help you. You had to do it yourself.
At the beginning, we just realized, I mean, the schools, the fact that the schools were not teaching mathematics. They were afraid, they were scared. The natural sciences in the area, a principal had to be really brave to say, in my school, I'm going to teach mathematics, and then he would do whatever he needs to do. So most of the schools were very, very afraid. They were scared. And schools are government institutions. So one could say the government was actually yeah, it was scary environment for the teachers and the principals. So from there, one could see that, look, we have to help the schools. We cannot expect them to brave like we were trying to do. So let's come up with something that becomes supplementary to to the schools, and the principals welcomed everything. I mean, we ended up teaching primary schools in the whole district. They had to produce mathematics kits and biology, and they did. And those kits, those material, even today, are still being used in the schools. So we knew that because of the system, we cannot expect it to just correct itself. Let's do something. Maybe later on the fear will run away. Maybe they will come on board and they will support. Yes, they did support where they could, but it was clear that we needed to confront this from somewhere just out, not within the government itself, but the community, from within the community itself.
Okay. Now, how many people, how many teachers at the end of the day did you influence? How big did the program become?
The teachers came in when, I mean, the training of the teachers that I have mentioned came in a little bit late when it was clear that we are making a lot of progress with the learners. So already it was after 1995 when we already, the laboratories were there. We already had the computer lab, and we had a few people that already were ready. For instance, the University of Pretoria, lecturers who were doing research in this way or that way with the use of information and information and communication technologies. So the training of the teachers came in at that stage, and it was a huge program that got supported by the provincial government and the district. So it covered the whole district. Let me say, yeah, it was a district in Nkangala district, and it involved nearly all the primary schools. I have the numbers are there, but I can't think of the numbers at this stage. But it was covering the whole district.
Okay.
So it was a lot of schools from a district in Nkangala.
Okay. Now, once you start to educate people in mathematics and children in mathematics, how then does it become, you could say, how do you create a digital village or a smart community? Because that was one of the objectives. So how did they bring it again back to their local community?
That is what we are trying to do now,
Yeah.
some 30 years after.
Okay.
There we actually ignited the fire, we planted the seed. So what happened is the students let me put it this way. We had to prove that these students can pass mathematics at school, and then they can get to a university and qualify to get there and be supported through the university program so that they become engineers, they become medical practitioners, they become educators, they become the professionals in their various careers related to the sciences and commercial. So basically, we created a pathway for them after they graduated for 10 years nonstop. Literally, I drove the students. I mean, I started with 15 of them that we produced. I had to drive them to the University of Pretoria physically, put them in the car because I happened to have a car at that stage, and then drove them. When we got there, we said, look, university, here are the students that nobody believed that they could pass mathematics. They passed. Can we arrange such that they also get some funding because they were from very poor background? And the University of Pretoria, amongst all the other universities, that one became outstanding partner. I mean, it was almost understood that when we took them there, they would find a way of arranging some funding for them. We even had a bursary fund that was funded by some people from overseas, mostly from the US. So there was a specific bursary fund that was kind of ring-fenced. Someone might say this was not fair to the rest of South Africa. But the university said a community like this that has shown that it can stand and it can work so hard and produce these kinds of products to feed the university, it is definitely worthy of support. So we had this ring-fenced kind of bursary, and the students would get in there, and then they would eventually pass. And then fast forward it, others then realized that something is happening, and we were able to bring a lot of other people, train them through exactly the inductive process involving University of Pretoria people who were more on the ICT side, informatics, and luckily eventually I was there at the university, and then we started building a strong partnership, especially ICT related. The lab was put up, and then the planting of the seed from the ICT side began in that way. And that is why through all the offerings of SEIDET, the use of ICT has been central to it. And then eventually other people got trained enough within the community to give us this confidence that yes, people do understand the value of ICT, and therefore perhaps we are now ready to go into we can start talking about a smart community. So the smart community, it's been smart, but mostly without the technology, without ICT, but this is the time now that everything could be put together to make it.
Yeah, so this is very much playing the long game. This is like a very long-term investment in you could say the next generation to get it right. Now, how do you then get people still motivated? How do you show and define success in this case? What does success mean in all those years you're working on this?
To me, it is still that definition of success, which is the building of legacy for future generations. So we are still defining success. So this is the journey of defining success, working tirelessly, long-term, but making sure that the generations to come benefit from the hard labor. It's not necessarily for us. That's why the program we are engaging on now is actually the building of the smart communities, but these are communities for the future. So we may not see the full benefit now ourselves, but maybe 3 generations from now, they will find this embedded, and then they will just come in and enjoy living in that community.
Now, did you experience also other parts of South Africa come and look at what you're doing? Showcase is an example for other communities?
Yeah. Actually, what happened was that the University of Pretoria, Professor Diego Drode and the other, he since passed on, but the other people that he taught, they really believed and saw a lot of value in this, and they saw a possibility for other communities to learn, and I was part of them when we agreed that perhaps let us try to extend this. We have seen the value of this. Let's try and extend it to other parts of the country. And we ran a program, and to our disappointment, it it just didn't fly. And because we were working with academics, they went deeper to really look at why, but how come that this thing that clearly works, why is it that it doesn't seem to be replicable? Until it was clear that it was mostly based on goodwill, the goodwill and the voluntary nature of people, the goodwill, social capital that resides within a particular community. If you can't easily have it in another community, especially if you don't have the same the champion, you don't have the will that is there. So, but then there are elements, and this is what we are really looking for: the people that understand entrepreneurship, the people that understand business and its nuances. They must come in, because even when you have the social capital, there are a lot of business elements in it, which should enable some kind of replication. It's something that as a scientist, we really look for. We want something that can be able to be repeated elsewhere. But with this, we realized that yes, others, and there were lots and lots of other South Africans in other parts of the country that said, why don't you bring this to our area? Why don't you? And then we told them that, oh, we already know that it doesn't work like that. So we learned early, so we were careful not to try and say to people, whatever work there will work in their environment. But we knew that there are elements there which could be learned that can be tried elsewhere.
Very valuable knowledge to pass on. I would assume this would require a number of Lekgotas to transfer that knowledge and experience.
Yeah.
And maybe for the audience who are not familiar with a Lekgota, could you please give a brief definition of what it is and how it's being used in South Africa?
You said I missed the
Lekgota as a way, Lekgota to transfer knowledge, the meeting place in the village.
Yeah, look, the champion must be there.
Yeah,
the champion must be there, and I happen to be that champion, and the champion then need a base support within, that is rooted within the community, to be able to say, yes, we believe in this thing that you are championing, and we are willing to bring our part, and then use that network of people to bring others as a support base, so that you have, because it wasn't based on lots of funding that came from elsewhere. It relies mainly on network of people that support each other, but having enough understanding and knowledge to be able to keep this thing going. Understanding that you need to keep the stakeholders, the support base together in order to move forward. But of course, you must not try to leap and leave the people behind, because you will then fall flat.
Yeah. Now, I can imagine that, as you mentioned, as a champion yourself, you are also at the same time a role model. People look up to you, say, hey, you are going to tell us how it should be done, given your experience. Are there any role models you yourself have? Where do you draw your inspiration from?
Yeah, no, they are not in the sense of the building of this smart community per se, because it's something that we are still exploring. But I draw a lot of inspiration from people that work in the charities, in the charity space, the volunteers, the people and the entrepreneurs, the people that despite many failures, they just fall they dust themselves, and then they stand up again and they walk. And I've seen people from very poor backgrounds working for a meal on a day-by-day basis. They are there every day, getting little as possible, but they are able to sustain their lives. Others even able to pay for their children at school and university. So I am very much inspired by those kinds of people who try, who fall several times, but never quit. And there are many of them around.
Got that. Now, how would you translate that to an advice for, you could say, the next generation, to young people starting on their journey? What would you advise them? What have you learned over all those years?
They must, as early as possible in their life, and this is not something that comes easily, but that's something that they must look for. Identify your focus as early as possible, and then stick to it throughout. Don't quit because it seems it's like a challenge. Stick to what your focus is, what you really would like to do, and then just stick to it through thick and thin.
Well, I've seen followed your own advice by founding the institute, by getting people educated, young kids in mathematics. Now you're into the next phase, turning those villages into smart villages, in smart societies. Is there anything this global audience, which is listening to this conversation, any question you have for them, any way they can help you go to the next step?
Oh yeah, I would be, and this is the nature of SEIDET, how we have been thriving, I think I would say, or we have been motivated throughout. When we speak, we have always had a response from people to say, yes, we are there, and we had more than 30 or so people from overseas that came just to come and see this story that they keep reading. And we would like people to come, those that can. When you visit South Africa, please ask about SEIDET, ask about Siyabuswa, ask about Jackie and his team. Come to Siyabuswa. But those that cannot come, we have published this book and two books. In fact, it's several of them. Get hold of one of them, especially the one that we have just launched about approaches to building a smart community. Read it and see if there are some approach in there, one approach in there that you may want to try for yourself in whatever part of the world, especially the developing world. We believe that in one of the approaches of building a smart community that's proposed in there, we believe that it could be applicable elsewhere in the world, and we would like people to try this out for themselves. And if they find that working, they must tell us that we are trying one of our approaches. But those that want to work with us, try with us, come as well, because we are going to be trying this right in Siyabuswa. In Siyabuswa, we are going to be piloting now the building of a smart community. And we would be happy to have other people. Perhaps they have already tried it. We know about smart cities. People already have smart cities, but we want to try the building of smart communities, even within cities. So people with experience, please come and work with us.
Jackie, that's a great call to action. You've told us about your great journey so far, and now where you stand, taking it to the next level in South Africa. Hey, I want to thank you so much for sharing your insights and where you are. Congratulations, well done. And so, ladies and gentlemen, this was Jackie Phahlamohlaka talking about his great work in helping South Africa, getting those smart villages and digital villages in place. So, Jackie, thank you so much.
Thank you, Fritz. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Much appreciated.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.